welcome everybody. Kind of different doing a lecture without you guys in the class. So I guess that's a way of saying I miss you guys. So hopefully you enjoy this week, not having to report to class. Hopefully you do well on your exam, and that we can keep things moving here by covering chapter 7. So with nobody here today, I'm probably going to stop it. Maybe I try to do 3 parts. I'm still worried about things locking up and us losing part of the lecture. So anyway, we'll get started here. I was also kind of bummed that this happened to be the week that we didn't meet in person, because leadership is something that's a passion of mine, and so I was looking forward to having some good discussion that we won't have, but we may be able to come back to it too if we get caught up and do some things. So we'll dig into leadership. Obviously, we'll talk about management as well. Actually, the chapter starts with management first, and I definitely believe there is a difference between management and leadership, but I also believe that they're equally important. You need to have components of both in a business. So management here is talking about planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So if you look at the definition closely, those are the 4 things you really need to be prepared to do as a manager. You got to lead, plan, organize, and control. And later on in the slides, we'll dig into how does that look like, what are the actual techniques you're using, and that sort of thing. Then just throw a little stat about what some of the managers are looking at. I think this is a little bit of an oversimplification, and I don't necessarily love this graph either, because how do you get respect? We'll be a strong manager. Well, it's kind of the chicken and the egg, meaning if I have respect, I'm usually a strong manager, but if I'm a strong manager, I'll get respect. So how do I get that done? So I think when you look at respect, I think comes down to several things. I think treating people fairly. I think people need to believe that you're equitable, that you're fair. And then I think it's also a component of competency, whether it be competency in my management skills or my leadership skills, my training abilities. I think there's always value, and you gain more respect when you've kind of been there, done that. You're willing to roll your sleeves up and get dirty with everybody else. So, and I think respect is important. I think trust is even more important, but respect is important as well. Some school stats here. Ironically, my son committed to Brown, so I was kind of hoping Brown University would have been up on this graph, but a lot of this competition is, but they're not up there. So here we go. This graph is really good. I hope you can see that at home. If not, the PowerPoint slides are out there. But this is a nice graph because it really breaks down those 4 functions of management and gets them, grouped together in a way that you can get your mind around, I hope. So planning. Well, no matter what you're doing, if you're planning a spring break trip or you're wanting to go, you want to get anything accomplished, you got to start with a plan. Even if you choose the plan to be no plan, you need to make those decisions. So plan, what do we start looking at here? Well, we need to understand our organizational goals. So again, depending on what level of a manager we are, some of those goals have been provided to us. If we're an executive level manager, those might be some of the goals that we're actually coming up with. So we need to understand our goals, and then obviously start working on some strategies to reach those goals, which then will bring you to what kind of resources are available for us to try to attain these goals. And then how will we measure whether we're on track of accomplishing those goals? Excuse me. So planning is a function of management. You might be planning a schedule, how many employees do we need in, or you might be planning, how many factories are we going to grow and build over the next 5 years. So it kind of depends on where you're at on the organizational chart. From a leading standpoint, we're going to spend a lot of time at the last part of this chapter talking about leadership. But even if my primary function is management, I need to still have some leadership skills. I need to be able to provide some feedback. I need to give people assignments. I need to kind of delegate responsibilities, hold people accountable for those, clarifying what's right and wrong. So motivating folks, understanding what demotivates people, try to get those hurdles out of the way so that you can try to motivate people. So leading is still important. We'll talk more about it here soon. Organizing, I think probably organizing and controlling are probably the two greatest management functions for your mid-level to lower level managers. What are we talking about organizing? Again, allocation of resources being a big one. Could be number of employees, could be which products to make first, could be pay, money. So the resources that we have available, how are we allocating those? And then, what kind of structure do we need for all of us to work well together? Is it a very tall structure with a hierarchy? Is it a flat structure? So let's be thinking about that. Do we have the resources that we need? Do we need to recruit more people? Do we need to train more people? Do we need to develop our internal people? Do we hire from outside? All these things are organizing management functions. And then controlling. And this is in a fairly established business. You'll spend a lot of time as a manager in the controlling area of your duties. So what are we doing there? Well, we've already talked about planning. Either we set some goals or some goals were handed to us. Now all of a sudden we're measuring in the controlling side, are we actually hitting those goals? And are those goals producing the results that we thought they would produce? So we're monitoring performance relative to a standard. Obviously, when we get great performance, we're rewarding that performance, we're recognizing that performance to celebrate that performance. And then if our performance is not where we want it to be, we're obviously holding those folks accountable. We are providing additional training, figuring out where they got distracted from the goal. That's just as equally as important as it is celebrating. And then if we're accomplishing all of our goals, but they're not leading in the proper direction, we may be back to the whole planning stage again. Where now all of a sudden we're trying to figure out, maybe we thought this would get accomplished a certain way and it wasn't. Vision, I would put this a little bit more on the leadership side, but managers need to understand vision, and sometimes they are the responsible ones, especially in a hiring environment where maybe human resources selected somebody or selected a group of candidates, and then the manager finally ultimately hired the one that they wanted. That manager probably needs to be prepared to cast some vision with regards to the overall organization. So a vision is more than just an objective or a goal. When you're casting a vision, you're really trying to give meaning behind the organization, trying to give purpose for what the organization means, not just to your customer, but maybe to your stakeholders. What are some of those stakeholders? You're talking customers, but you're talking employees, owners, suppliers. So when you're casting a vision, you're trying to give examples, give a purpose of the organization as it relates to all of those entities. And so a lot more than just, hey, we want to make money. That's a goal. Okay. So what are we doing and why are we trying to do it? Mission statement really plugs directly into the vision statement. It just gets down a little bit deeper than your vision statement with regards to each of those entities and how we plan to satisfy them. So a little bit closer to an objective or strategy, whereas a vision can be pretty grand, pie in the sky, sort of ideas. From that mission statement though, because you've walked through each stakeholder, for the owners, we want to make a reasonable profit every year. For the consumer, we want to deliver what we say we were going to deliver, high quality, good value proposition, okay? For our employees, we want to be reliable. We want to feel like they're respected and treated fairly. So whatever the case may be, your mission statement is going to include all those. Maybe we want to have a very strong environmental stance or some philanthropy that we're doing. All that's in your mission statement. And so all of that then breaks out into other goals and objectives, goals being more long-term in nature, and then objectives being some more short-term statements that are directly connected to those organizational goals. So we got vision way up here, Mission still pretty high set, not changing it a lot from 1 year to the next. Still pretty high. And then underneath that, you've got goals that if we accomplish those goals, we should accomplish our mission. Okay? And then objectives would be even more short term than that to support those goals. So it's okay. Well, that makes sense. Let's set some goals. How do we start to figure out which goals we should set? What are we capable of? Based on that, when you start thinking about that, you need to then start thinking about the SWOT analysis. SWOT just stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Think of it this way. If I'm going to set this mission and we want to accomplish going to the moon, literally going to the moon, we need to first think about our strengths. What are we good at? Our weaknesses, what might we need help with? Opportunities, hey, if we go to the moon, what does that open for us? How does that help us as an organization? And threats, who might not want us to go to the moon? What might keep us from going to the moon beyond our weaknesses? Okay, so before we come up with any sort of plan, we need to first know where are we at right now. Where's the organization sit right now? If you guys were in class today, I would have you do a SWOT analysis on yourself. What are my personal strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? So the slide, again, I hope you guys can see it. If you can't, pull it up, on McGraw Hill. But strengths. One of the things you need to think about when it comes to strengths, and it may not be on the slide, but it's what I try to emphasize on the strengths inside the SWOT analysis, is it needs to be very specific, and it needs to be something that another organization in your industry doesn't have. It has to be an advantage. Something that I can do maybe cheaper, maybe I can do because I've got a proprietary patent on a particular system or recipe. Maybe it is, I was the first one to do it, so I'm better than everyone at it. But you can't just say, well, one of our strengths is smart people. Because guess what? Your competition, they have smart people as well. Okay? So when you think of strengths, you got to think of something that I'm unusually good at compared to my industry, or if you're doing a personal SWOT, compared to my peer group. Okay? Weaknesses. A lot of times the weaknesses in an organizational standpoint come back to resources. Maybe we don't have the capital to go to the moon. We don't have the cash, the money. Or maybe one of our weaknesses is, we've not been a very technically innovative organization, so we're behind from an innovation standpoint. Well, if we're going to do something that's a very technical solution, cutting edge solution, and yet we have a culture of being kind of a laggard with regards to adopting new technology, that's a weakness for ours. Okay. Opportunities. Again, what's it going to open up if we attack this goal, and why? Why do we want to do it? What is there to accomplish? So you might be looking at, maybe we can sell this item that maybe is in its decline stage or maturity stage. Maybe we can open up a whole other market for it. Okay, so now we can increase sales because we've taken an existing product to a new market. Or maybe we're saying, you know what? This product is in the market or in the mature or decline stage. We need to think of what's going to replace that. And we've got that in hand, and that's going to open up a whole new way to solve this customer's need by doing now this technology or this service. Okay, those are opportunities. Threats. Threats think about not just from competition and not just from internally in our organization, but what about the environment that we're working in? What if a war breaks out? What if our government starts to struggle financially and we go into a recession? What if we can't protect our technology? So we're innovative, but people are allowed to steal it. Those are threats. So when you're thinking of the threats, think beyond beyond just your own four walls and beyond just your competition. Clearly your competition can be a threat as well. What if we get additional regulations? What if the government starts to tax us more? Okay, all those sort of things. What if the growth of our market isn't what we thought it was going to be? All those could be threats. Okay. So then they want us to jump into understanding the different types of planning. And so they got a little graph here for us, and they got some definitions on the next slides as well. We're going to start with strategic planning. So strategic planning, in the graph here it says long-range goals, the broad goals. Okay, the strategic planning is kind of the next step after you've written your mission statement. So in your strategic plan, executive level, the CEOs are coming up with some strategies, some goals, some direction that they want to pursue. And then from there, that plan has to be connected to what they're calling your tactical plan. So now we're looking at who needs to do it, how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, what are we going to do, all to accomplish that strategic plan that the executives have already come up with. Okay, so it's one of the first real steps starting to allocate resources. Do we have all the people that we need? Do we need to hire some people? Okay, so that's what you're doing in your tactical plan. Make sure we got all these from this slide. Yeah. I mentioned resources in the tactical plan. You are considering those in the strategic plan as well, because obviously if you just know we don't have the money to do that, then you wouldn't make that a goal. As an executive, you wouldn't make that goal if you just knew there was no way to accomplish it. And then operational planning. This is the actual, all right, we've pushed the boat off from the dock, and now we're actually getting it done. So now we've said we thought we needed 5 people, we thought we knew how to do it, and we thought we'd do it every Wednesday, or whatever the tactical plan was. The operational plan, you're actually doing it. Meaning, okay, Kyle, we need you here on Wednesday for 4 hours because Bobby's going to, and you're putting the plan together. You're actually implementing all of those objectives from the tactical plan. And then contingency planning. We do this in our own lives, right? Hey, I want to get this accomplished, but if it doesn't happen, I might want to think about doing that. So contingency planning is this idea of what's an alternate plan? What if we need to modify? If this doesn't work out, what's a slight adjustment we could make? And obviously you're contingency planning all along because you're monitoring whether or not, as we accomplish these objectives, which are connected to the goals, which are connected to the mission, as we accomplish these objectives, does it look like we're heading down the path we thought we were going to head down? Are we in line with our overall strategical plan? Because if not, we might want to do some adjustment or some contingency planning right there on the fly. Okay, shifting gears a little bit, talking about decision making. Clearly managers have to make a lot of decision making. And we make them in our own personal lives, so I think these things make sense to you. They throw out some skills on how to make good decisions, and they give you a little decision-making model here. And again, because we've done these individually, I think these make sense. But clearly we need to understand the situation first. What's at stake? What are all the moving parts? What's at play? Okay, just a good assessment, first and foremost, what's going on. Okay, that's the first thing we gotta do, because we can't really come up with a solution if we don't know exactly what's going on first. So we got to collect the needed information that we need to figure out either about the situation, or we start to develop our alternatives. Okay, so we know what the lay of the land is, we know what's kind of going on, what the storm is, whatever. You start thinking about what are our solutions here? What alternatives do we have at our disposal that we can afford, that we can implement, that we have the know-how to do? You start developing those, and then you spend some time trying to flush out which one is best. Okay, and then once you know which one's best, then you're just executing. And the final step that a lot of managers don't do is the follow-up. So a lot of managers are pretty good at, and we're going to jump into problem solving in a second, but a lot of managers are pretty good at understanding the situation, thinking through all the alternatives, coming up with the best alternative and putting the action in place, but then oftentimes they just turn around and go on to the next thing and never look back to figure out, was that the right decision? Was it the best decision? Did it affect the people involved the way I thought it would affect the people involved? So there's a lot more to it, and you should spend some time on that follow-up side. Both, one, just to make sure that the decision is working the way you thought it would, just to also reaffirm to you that you're heading down the right path and you're making good decisions. Problem solving is really kind of the same concept. It's just happening a little bit quicker, and it's a little less formal. So we got to make a decision, boom, and sometimes we don't have time to gather all the necessary information. We just got to kind of go with what we think and based on our experience. So. Okay, I'm going to stop this recording real quick before we get into this levels of management. Again, I'm going to start right back up with part 2 of chapter 7. I just don't want to lose our recording. So hang tight, and I'll be right back, and we'll start up another clip.